Welcome back to Future Stars. Train hard, live large with INC Sports Nutrition, available only at Chemist Warehouse. Every week we feature a women's segment in the football world. It's going great guns, women's football. Ros Lanigan is the women's football reporter. She joins us every week, and today, Ros, welcome. You've got a very special guest.
Thanks, Brownie. Yes, I'm very excited to welcome the young lady sitting next to me. It's Holly Ransom, the youngest AFL club board member at this stage from the Port Adelaide Football Club. Thanks for joining us, Holly.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Now, you're originally from WA, grew up there. You're now living in Melbourne, and you're on the board of Port Adelaide. Tell me how that comes about.
I geographically confuse everyone, I think. So born and bred in the West. I did make the move to Melbourne from a work standpoint about 2 years ago, but feel very fortunate that the opportunity came up. David Koch approached me earlier this year. I've been a passionate football fan since I think as early as I could walk and talk, and said, look, I'd love to talk to you about an opportunity to contribute into our club and get involved in the game. And I feel very fortunate now that that's progressed and I've had the opportunity to get involved.
Is there any stereotypes you have to break down with, I guess, older gentlemen in the AFL industry? I'd imagine that young guys coming through AFL are very open-minded for women being in higher power positions, but do you get any resistance from the older guys?
You know what, I feel really fortunate, at least with the Port Adelaide experience that I've had, with everything from our board through our CEO and certainly our chairman, who was the one that was progressive enough to even open up the conversation, to have been so warmly embraced. And that's the whole dynamic of the club and actually within the AFL community. And I'd like to thank everyone for that. I think it's a really exciting front of the game that not only we're looking at things like the rollout of the Women's League and entirely new frontiers for women to participate in the game, but we're also starting to think differently about age and diversity in other forms.
Aside from your footy involvement, obviously you're also a marathon runner and a triathlete, which I am very respectful of, and I have no idea where you fit that in. What do you hope you can bring to the Port Adelaide board, Holly?
Well, I feel like I've got the most exciting brief going around. So our Koshy, when he sat down with me and said we'd love to have you on the board, he said there's two things from our standpoint. Firstly, we want to be the club that engages the next generation of fans. You know, we know we've got an enormous group of young people coming through. We know the game needs to be taken to them differently and we want to be the club for them. And secondly, we want you to challenge us on everything we're doing. We want you to ask us why, force us to think differently about how we do it, because we don't just want to lead the game or do well within our own constraints. We actually want to be best practice in sport at large. So for me, that's really exciting to play a role in really thinking about how do we do things differently and take footy to the next level, take the game to the world as we're doing with China. As I said, I feel very lucky.
Just like boys trying to make it to the elite level, not all the women are going to make it to the elite level as well. So how important is it that we open up other opportunities for them within the AFL system?
Oh, I think that's such a good point. You know, one of the things I think is really critical with the conversation we're having around the Women's League is that doesn't become the one frontier that we advance women's involvement in. I mean, it is truly amazing when you're looking at the participation growth of women in the game and what we've seen year on year. Remarkable, fastest growing component of our game. But just to your point, it's critical that we see women have great opportunities at club level to be in management and leadership, at board level to be involved in making decisions on the game. So I think we need to continue to think about how we present a diverse picture of women in leadership, women involved, and multiculturalism and all these different fronts of diversity across every touch point our game has.
While we're talking about women's footy, let's have a look at some of the big games in the VFL women's today. They'll happen this afternoon. Melbourne Uni taking on the VU Western Spurs. You would expect Melbourne to come out pretty strong after having a loss last week. Eastern Devils versus Cranbourne. The Devils get the job done there, and St Kilda will have a win over Knox, you would imagine. Diamond Creek versus Darebin is the main game today. It's a massive game. They've played off in the last 4 grand finals. Darebin's won the last 3, of course. This is some vision from round 2 when they played for the first time this year. Darebin kicked 6 goals to none in the first quarter that day and went on to win by 11 goals. Katie Brennan kicked 4 in the last quarter, and Jess Cameron just won for Diamond Creek that day. So that'll be a huge game today. But Holly, you're also on the Women's Advisory Group for the AFL going into the Women's League next year. How's that coming along?
It's great. Look, as we've mentioned throughout all the coverage of women's football, there's such momentum and excitement behind this part of the game right now. And so getting to be involved in that group that's got such an interesting set of perspectives involved in everything from footy operations through to players who will potentially be a part of that league. You know, really looking at how do we ensure that we're setting up a code here where women can be involved in the game for, 150 plus years. How do you harness this momentum but ensure we get the model, the concept, the form of the game right, so this is going to succeed and provide a long-term pathway for women in the game. So it's an incredible time to be involved in women in sport and women in AFL.
It certainly is. Ros, thanks very much for you again today. Fantastic. And we don't like to give Koshy too much credit. He works for another station. But he's obviously had an inspired choice listening to you speak today. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much, Holly.
Thank you so much, guys.